Welcome to the Money to the Masses podcast, putting you in control of your finances. It's a good thing podcasts are free, as this one isn't worth a penny. Here are your hosts, Damien Fay and Andy Leakes.
Now, Damien, before we get on with this week's podcast, you had something quickly to say about our sponsors.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor, Money Farm, and Money Farm are an online investment advisor and one of the biggest digital wealth management companies in Europe. So a big thank you to them for sponsoring the podcast. Now, Money Farm create portfolios to maximise long-term returns using ETFs to make incredibly cheap portfolios. And you even get the first £10,000 of your portfolio invested without any charge from Money Farm. And if you enter the code MTTM20K into the box when you sign up, you get the first £20,000 of your portfolio invested and run by moneyfarm.com without any charge.
Great stuff. On with this week's show. Hello and welcome to episode 115 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fay and me, Andy Leakes. Damien, Happy New Year. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Andy. I've got the usual New Year sort of sniffles and the cold that threatens to come and actually blow up into a full-blown cold. But I've got one of those irritating ones that you just go to bed at night and it just stops you sleeping. So yeah, I've got what everybody does in the new year. But apart from that, I'm really good. I'm excited. I've been refreshed from a small break over the Christmas period because I don't ever really take any time off doing what I do and we do because you just don't get any time. So it's been quite nice that I have a few days off with the family and I'm back, batteries charged. What about you?
Talking about batteries charged, I feel like that's all I've been doing over the past 2 weeks is charging batteries. Since Christmas and the toys, I remember mentioning on the pod a couple of years ago that I switched to 100% rechargeable batteries. So it was a big investment at the time because we had 100 different devices that all needed batteries. And literally the last couple of weeks, all I've been doing is charging and moving batteries from one thing to another. I think we've got 24 AA's and 32 AAA's that are on constant sort of cycles.
Your neighbours must be in their houses in the evenings and their lights just dim and they have like mini blackouts and they think, oh, Andy's recharging his batteries again, I think.
The amount of money I must have spent on the electricity from recharging his batteries, I probably just could have bought some Duracells and be done with it.
Are you still a rechargeable battery fan?
Yeah, I am. It really has been a good investment. I reckon I've spent about £35-40. No, possibly slightly more. But that's in like 2.5 years, and that's all I've spent. Whereas I know for certain I would have spent more on throwaway batteries because, my daughter's got this new Furby Connect thing. You can feed it and do all this kind of stuff, and it's all through apps, and they interact with each other. You're meant to be able to feed them through this app, but basically they eat batteries. They may as well eat batteries because every 2 hours I'm replacing the batteries on this thing.
Oh, I know what you mean because my daughter got one. Father Christmas was good. Obviously, she'd been good, and she got one of those things as well. They never stop, do they?
No.
But they teach kids if you hold them upside down for, I think it's about 8 seconds, they be quiet and they turn off. So I just hope she doesn't take that lesson and apply it to my youngest when she's crying, the 1 year old.
Yeah.
But the one good thing before we move on and we start talking about money, the one thing that using rechargeable batteries would do is, when you are finished with a toy or a toy goes and lives in its cupboard for all eternity or in the loft, you'd actually take the batteries out that are in there and use them, because I've got things out that we've used for our eldest and now for our youngest, and the batteries are still in there and they probably don't work and half of them then end up leaking or whatever. So I'd recycle the batteries more. I'd actually use them rather than putting 2 in something and then parking it. Anyway, I'm boring myself. Right, money stuff, Andy. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, that's my question to you. Money stuff, Damien. What are we doing?
Right, we got 3. Is it 3 pieces? I have to count. Maybe 4. But I'm going to just give people a quick update on 80/20 because it's a new year. New year, everybody's excited. New Year's resolutions. I am going to talk about a New Year's resolution in terms of people going to the gym, and everybody seems to go to the gym and want to get fit in the new year. And I want to just I was asked by a journalist, again, I know this is how I start a lot of stories, but a journalist asked me this week, for one of the national papers about how to get cheap gym membership, how to cut the cost. So I thought I'd best tell the podcast listeners.
I do love the January stories. The newspapers are basically, you can guarantee the two main lead stories on January the 1st or 2nd. It's going to be train prices rise and gym memberships and how are you going to lose weight this year. So love it, yeah.
Yeah, so who better to ask than the man who hasn't been to a gym for about 3 years. But anyway, we'll gloss over that. I can talk about how to cut the price of it. I also want to talk about one of the biggest threats to people's wealth in 2017, which is Donald Trump. And there's a neat way of stopping Donald Trump wiping the value of your investment. So listen out for that.
Does it involve a gun and travelling to the US and finding where his next engagement is?
No, it doesn't. Gaffer tape would probably be the best thing to stop him talking. And the last piece, which I want to talk about, has got a bit of a New Year theme. We could have sat here and done the task that everybody should do in a new year, and I thought that's a bit tedious, and I always like to be a bit different. So I'm looking at the behaviours that make people who are successful and good with money, what the sort of behaviours they have and the things they do and don't do. So it's kind of a bit of a checklist to talk through to make you better with money, because everybody they start the new year, it's the other resolution, I've got to sort my finances, and rather than give you a full-blown list, but I will tell you how to do that quickly actually, you need to modify behaviour, so we're going to go through that.
Great, and that's exactly how you should lose weight as well. Don't go on a diet, modify your behaviour and you will naturally lose weight. Anyway, that's one of my little topics. Damien, what are we going to start with?
Well, we're going to start with the new year stuff, because with money and behaviours. Before we do that, I'm going to give Andy's book a quick plug, because Andy, a couple of years ago, was it last year, you did the book that went viral and put you at the top of Amazon in every country in the world, where you did the diet book. Quickly tell us about it, Andy. I know regular listeners may have heard it before, but there's loads of listeners who weren't around last year, so quickly, you plug it, Andy.
Well, yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and actually we let our listeners into a little bit of a secret. I was telling them as we were going along, as I was writing the book and doing the experiments. Yeah, just in a nutshell, it's me trying 10 different diets to lose 25 pounds in 50 days. So that was the challenge that I set myself, and really the whole idea was to see which diets worked, which didn't, and what the conclusion would be. I won't spoil the ending for you, but it's a good one. Check it out. It's called Minimise Me, and it's 10 diets to lose 25 pounds in 50 days. And yeah, it went to the top of the Amazon charts, and loads of people reviewed it, and the reviews on Amazon are really, really good. So it's definitely something I'm proud of.
Yeah, and Andy's being modest because he ended up on TV in, I don't know which countries now, I lost track. And it was picked up by all the mainstream media. It's brilliant. Go and read it, because it isn't a dry topic, because Andy, being the witty man he is, actually brings some humour to the whole thing. And so go download that book. Right, now we're moving on to the money stuff for the new year. Talking of books, it's a great link. It wasn't contrived, but my book, The 30-Day Money Plan, Fix Your Finances in 5 minutes a day. Now, a couple of years ago I wrote that book. You can still buy it on Amazon, and it's £4.99. It's got loads of reviews, 5-star reviews, and thank you to everybody who did review it. And again, it went to number 1 on the business charts on Amazon. And what I do is I teach people in that book how to sort their finances in 5 minutes a day for 30 days, from all sorts of things to do with debt, mortgages, spending, budgeting, all these sorts of things. The stuff that you would do, which is why I'm not doing it on the podcast. And you don't have to pay for it. Anybody who listens to this podcast, if you go to, you listen to the little snippet at the end of the podcast, which tells you how to get a free copy of the book. So listen to the end. At the end of the podcast, every podcast listener can get a free copy of the book, and it will tell you how to do all this stuff. So by the end of January, you could be absolutely sorted anyway. So moving on from that, that's sorting your finances. The thing going forward that people need to do if you want to try and be good with money, it's more of a mindset and a behavioural thing. And the first tip I'm going to run through, some of these tips have come from, most of them, a lot of them are mine, some for other people who've done similar things, analysed which successful people do. Now, the first thing that people who are successful and are good with money do is not fixate on price, and they instead focus on value of anything. So it's not about how much something costs, it's really about how much it's worth. And the quick tip for trying to be more focused on value than cost is to work out what your hourly rate is if you work. So if you have a job, some people know what their hourly rate is, other people might be paid a salary. Work out what your hourly rate is and an approximation, then you know that the value of something is how many hours you have to work to attain that. So whether it's a handbag or I don't know, whatever item of clothing, you can work out actually that £200 jacket is going to take me, I don't know, 2 days to earn that if I work, and then you can see the value of it. So that's one of the big tips. Don't focus on price, focus on value, and therefore you don't get sucked into sales and buying things you don't really need. The next tip, jump in whenever you want, Andy. The next tip, look at ways to increase your income. Now, if you start a new year, it's always one of those things that people might start thinking about their jobs and considering whether they should move. And most people don't. They just stay where they are. Now, one of the things with the likes of Money Saving Expert and the other sites out there, and a lot of money bloggers, is they focus on money saving. And that's fine, because you need that. That is a great skill set, and they do very well at it. But it's a law of diminishing returns. You can't. There's only a finite amount you can actually save, and that's basically how much you have, because then you can save on holidays. There's a limit, isn't there? So if you want to improve your lifestyle or have more money, then it's not about just keep cutting your energy bills, because there's a limit to how much you can get down to. So at some point you need to turn it around and start looking at how you're going to increase your earnings. Now, there is a link here to this actually, because I mentioned in the last podcast, I'm currently making a new podcast that I'm interviewing a whole bunch of people who've done some amazing things, where they are ordinary people who've decided to follow a passion or a dream, and they've turned it into a business, and it's blown up, and they're happier for it, and they are almost always wealthier for it. And so it's about doing something that Americans call your side hustle. I don't really like the term, but you might go to work, and you go to work 9 to 5 or even longer. Well, there are 24 hours in a day, and so rather than watch EastEnders or any other soap, you could be doing something in the background that could, in 3, 4, 5, 6 years' time, end up being something you do forever that's passionate. Andy's a good example. Andy did his writing, and he had that amazing journey of where he ended up. Money to the Masses is a similar thing, what I've done. I did this for 4 years while I had another daytime job, until I'm now working on it full time. So think about boosting your income. It doesn't have to be getting a pay rise. It can be starting to do something like get a hobby or something you love and work on that, and then eventually that could become something that will be a business, or try and get a pay rise. And I always said to people who are after a pay rise, the big tip I ever came across in trying to get somebody to give you a pay rise, you've got to put the effort in and give them a reason to want to give you a pay rise. You've got to make yourself indispensable. But when you sit down and ask for it, I've always found it very beneficial to put the other person on the other side of the table, normally your boss, in your situation, because it can help you in any negotiation. And by that, I mean, if you said to them, so I work, I don't know, overtime every day for no money. I go home, I work harder than most people, I do blah, 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 whatever. How would you feel if you were in my shoes and you said to me, I can only have an inflationary pay rise of, 0.5% or 1%? And you force them to answer the question from your viewpoint, then you've already starting to win, because then they are thinking like you. And if they're thinking like you, the chances are you're more likely to get a pay rise. As a quick tip, you might as well try it. It does work. It has worked for me in the past, and I know it has worked for other people. Moving on, the other things you should do if you want to be better with money is to try and put aside money if you can, but really it's more about budgeting. Don't overspend. It sounds obvious, but most people don't try and live within their means. And do you remember, Andy, probably, I don't know how many podcasts ago, we discussed something called the 50-30-20 principle, which has been bandied around a lot, which is, for people who don't know, it's an idea that you should take 50% of your net income, and that should be on your things you need, so your bills, mortgage, the stuff you can't actually live without spending. Then 30% should be based on your spending, the things that are a bit more discretionary, and then the final 20 should be used for saving and paying off debts. And that's an ideal. I think when we covered this, I think you and I both felt that was quite optimistic, because I think most people, I mean, I certainly know that more than 50% of my income goes on just the pure needs thing. I think more people are a bit more hand to mouth than this ideal. But the point is don't overspend. And if you do download the 30-day money plan book, there's an app. I explain how to easily work out your finances. The most boring thing you can do in the world is to sit there and try and work out what you spent your money on month by month and how much you spend, and do that sort of budgeting. What you should do, or is better to do, and more enjoyable, is actually just to live your life for 1 month and then use some of these apps that can track what you're spending, and then at the end they can analyse what you spent your money on, and you can look at it in the cold sort of hard truth of what you actually did, and then you can make adjustments thereafter. I explain more about it in the 30-day money plan, but it's a good way of budgeting, because even I don't even like to sit down and do this stuff. It's time consuming. I'd rather be spending time with my kids.
It is time consuming, and I can tell you that for a fact, because that's exactly what I do. Month on month, Damien, I sit down, go through my bank statements and budget and put every single penny into a little pigeonhole. But it does help me because I'm a control freak, and I mean, for some people it works. Because if I was to do what you did and what you say in the book, which is a really, really good idea, basically forget about it, do it via an app or whatever, and then in the cold hard whatever, look back on it. The problem is that doesn't necessarily help with focusing on holidays that are going to happen next year and things like that. But I suppose there's a...
Yeah, but Andy, you just hit the nail on the head in another way, because there's another point I'm about to come on to, which you've just proven and you've just pretty much said it, is reviewing, okay? Is to regularly review things. If you do something more regularly, then it stops becoming the Everest mountain of a task that you've got to complete. So in your instance, monthly going back, you don't have to spend as much time doing it, because you're keeping a plate spinning rather than having to pull off the trick of getting it spinning in the first place every 6 months or something like that. So it's far easier. So you need to keep regularly reviewing whether that's your budget, so you know whether you're going over or not, or importantly, it applies to investing. And I've got a real thing about the investing is my passion, and teaching people how to do it. An 80-20 investor, which I said I'd give you an update on, which I will do, is the DIY investment service that I run successfully for people. Teach them how I run money and show them how I invest my own money so they can learn from it. And the thing is, it's all about reviewing, because there's an idea if you just leave it, buy and hold is something they talk about in investing. You buy something, keep it for the long term. Well, that's great, but it's assuming things remain the same, and actually you don't need to buy and hold. You'll do far better by regularly reviewing things and changing it to adapt. Not every day or every month, but you can do it every so often. So reviewing is important. Next, moving on from that, one of the things I would say is financial statements. People who are, if you want to be better with money, and people who are, on the whole, pretty good with money, don't throw away financial statements. They don't ignore them. So open them, look at them. And in the last podcast, I talked about one of the tasks you should do over Christmas. The only task was to get your financial statements as they come through, and they're really useful for that time of year, because they normally do a calendar year's worth of whether it's your mortgage or your bills, and they can be really helpful in sorting your finances out fairly quickly. Again, the book tells you how to use them, so I'm not going to dwell on it here, but don't ignore financial statements. Get them emailed to you by all means and file them away, but you don't just ignore them and bury your head in the sand. The next couple of points I'm going to race through. The first one is admit that you don't know everything about money. And there's a desire to think we know everything about everything, and that we know lots about money is the same thing. And people feel that they don't know enough. And okay, that's great to know your sort of failings in some way. It's great to admit that I don't know everything about money. No one does. And I think that that's okay to you know your limits, and therefore you know to try and learn and improve your learning in certain areas. So admit that you don't know everything about money, and if you can admit what you don't know about, whether it's about the best credit cards or how to clear debt, then you can go and actually look for that help and that advice. And of course, what we do, moneytothemasses.com, you can find that. Take responsibility. No one else is going to sort your money out for you. It's one of the things in life, whether it's your salary, whether it's your debts, no one is going to fix it for you. The world doesn't work like that. If you can stay at home and bury your head in the sand, no one's going to come along with a magic wand, unless you're lucky or you win the lottery, to fix all this stuff for you. So start taking responsibility for it. I always remember, I'm no different to anybody, and I never used to when I was younger, and then got loads of debts, and then at some point it almost becomes crippling, and then you suddenly realise you've got to do something about it. So that in itself is liberating, if you can actually think, right, I'm going to make a plan. Because going back to, again, a previous podcast, if you can convert everything to do with money into a function of time, then that is pretty much the greatest force in the universe that you can harness. So if you've got debts, you build a plan that's going to pay them off. Maybe small chunks at a time, but you've got an end date. where you would have cleared them by. Put that in your diary. So therefore, you just got to just chug away with direct debits coming off each month, and you'll eventually get there. There's no race. You'll eventually clear it, whether it's a job, whether you go and you move into a career where you've got to take qualifications, where you eventually become qualified at something and you'll earn more money. Again, it makes you a function of time that you'll eventually get there by hook or by crook. So that is very liberating. It don't have to be that you suddenly overnight become a guru of money. No one really is a guru of money. Next thing is understand risk and appreciate it in terms of whether that's taking out life insurance so that you might die and your kids might be left behind, or your other half might end up losing the house. So think about those things. And investment risk. If you're going to start investing, then make sure you understand what your capacity to lose money is. Lots of people always go, oh, if you ask them what sort of risk would they take, I'm average, but that doesn't really mean anything. You actually might find that you are a fairly cautious person underneath it all. So one way to do that, there is a website called myriskprofile.com, which is run by a company that called Phenometrica, that you can pay to do a risk profiling questionnaire. It's not cheap, it's £30, but it is the leading one pretty much on the planet, and it's what if you go to a financial advisor, it's what they will use to try and assess your attitude to risk. And when you know whether you're like a low, medium or high risk type of investor, that's when you know what sort of investments will suit you and what risk you can take, which is important. And the biggest tip I want to just chuck in before we finish this section is don't let the pursuit of money overcome your values. And I want to give an example of where this occurred. There's a guy, I talk about fund managers quite a bit, and they're an interesting breed, and they obviously, you give them your money and they take a lot of it, and then they supposedly meant to make you richer. They don't always do that, a lot of them don't. Well, there was a guy called Mark Littleton, and he worked for a company called BlackRock, very big, he was a very successful fund manager. He was one of the people who'd be called almost a legend.
I worry the fact that you're using past tense and using the word was.
Yeah, I'm using the word was because at the back end of last year, he was given a 12-month prison sentence because of insider trading. And I don't know if people who listen to this know what insider trading is, but what he did was he was using information that he was privy to. Actually, it was people colleagues who he worked with, who were going on corporate dues with people who were within preferential positions in companies, so maybe directors or whatever. Insider trading is when you take information and you use it for your own profit. Information that other people in the marketplace won't be privy to, and you will go and use it to profit. And that's basically what he did. And he used it for his own personal gain, and he got caught out. And his career was in ruins, and whatever reasons he did it, I do not know. And now he's got a prison sentence. And that is a case of where somebody let the pursuit of money overcome their values, because presumably at some point he did have some values in there of what he was trying to do and invest and whatever it was. So don't become obsessed with money. I'm one of these people. I know I talk about money and money to the masses, but if people met me and saw pictures of me, I let people into a secret. The Ask Damien videos that you see online, and do send me in questions for those. If you don't know what they are, go on Facebook and our YouTube channel, and I answer questions. And you've seen them, haven't you, Andy? And I'm sit there.
I have indeed.
Yeah, and I'll let you into a secret. The clothes I wear aren't mine, and the reason they aren't mine is because I just don't have a very big wardrobe, because I'm just not that kind of guy who gets a lot of satisfaction about owning things and buying clothes and stuff like that. So when I do those videos, I've got a twin brother, and I don't know if you know this. If you didn't, there's a bit of insight into my world. I have a twin brother. The positive of having an identical twin brother is that you can go and video at his house and wear his clothes. He does know. He does know I know this, and it only extends to the t-shirts and the top half. I don't wear anything like underwear or anything, but it just goes to prove that I'm not that kind of guy who's obsessed by money. I mean, we all were when we were younger. I think I would hold my hand up to say I was one of those people who spent lots of money on things, on credit cards and stuff I shouldn't, and I therefore got bitten by it in the long run. And maybe that was a positive, because it turned me into the person I am now and the passions I have. So there you go, Andy. That was my quick roundup of how to be better with money.
Good, Damien. It's good to see that you're considering it a quick roundup, and yet we're sort of 25-30 minutes in. So.
Yeah. I have a problem with time. This goes, honestly, Andy, I'm not wearing a watch. I don't have a watch. my watch broke about 2 years ago and I don't have a watch. So people always think I'm keep looking at my phone because I'm obsessed with it. It's not. It's because I can't tell the time any other way because I don't have a watch. So there you go. That's why I'm poor with time management. Right, on to a quick one about Donald Trump. Now, do you remember I was talking about how to protect your finances from the man Donald Trump? Now, one of the biggest issues with a madman like Donald Trump is that he is trigger happy, isn't he, when it comes to tweeting. We've got to hope that he doesn't blow the world up with a nuclear arsenal that he's got at his disposal. But he does like to tweet, and he will tweet whatever seems to come to his mind on a given moment. The problem is, if you're investing in shares, Donald Trump has actually wiped millions off of companies' values in seconds by tweeting. I'll give you an example. He actually, I don't know if you remember, he called for a multi-billion-dollar order for a new Air Force One plane to be scrapped. And I don't know if you remember that. And Boeing making that plane. Well, of course, their shares tumbled. And then here's another tweet that Donald Trump sent. It was this year, at the start of this year. He wrote, General Motors is sending Mexican-made model of Chevy Cruze, I think that's how you say it, to US car dealers, tax-free across the border. Make in USA or pay big border tax! ! Basically, Donald Trump's threatening to hit them with massive taxes on their products. So, inevitably, their share price tumbled. So anybody who invests in companies is at the whim of Donald Trump's madness. So, a company...
Can I just put a quick question on that? We talked about insider trading in the last bit. I mean, Donald Trump is famously, rich, and he's become rich through various different means and investments and everything else. Is there any chance that any of this, surely he must know that he's influencing the financial markets, and which he's got a vested interest in anyway. So
well he loves the
I'm sure
idea.
he can never be charged, but...
Well, that's the idea of why the US president is supposed to withdraw from all his business practices, because you could say he'd have a conflict of interest, which Donald Trump has slowly but surely done. The only thing I think is ridiculous, Donald Trump has lots of his money in property, okay? So if he makes any decision related to property regulation, it's going to impact his wealth one way or another, because he still has his wealth wrapped up in that asset, in that world,
sure,
even if he's not managing it day to day. So, yeah, who says... I mean, let's be honest, what happens often with presidents is that, or people in American governments, and ignoring Donald Trump, normally when they come out, they go and get a very well-paid job in a big firm. So it could be someone in the Senate, end up being on the board of a arms company or something like that, because they've been making favourable votes or trying to push things in the favour of these companies while they were in office. And that's what happens, apparently, over in America. I'm not sure it's a hell of a lot different here, but but it's a good question. But what Donald Trump, his tweets at the moment are causing havoc with all sorts of companies. Now, a finance app has decided to include Donald Trump alerts, so that whenever he makes a tweet or a statement about a company, they will alert you that he's done it, so you could take evasive action, for want of a better word. So I just thought I'd mention it. The app is called Trigger, so it's free to download. They have a whole wide range of other triggers that they have. So I just thought I'd chuck it out there, because there are a lot of people who probably do invest, and they may invest in shares, which are much more volatile and susceptible to wild moves. Funds, not so much, because if you invest in a fund, it has hundreds of shares, so your fund won't have moved as much anyway, even if he talks about something that fund it invests in. So, but I know there are lots of people who invest in shares who listen to this podcast, so go and have a look at that. Right, last but no means least, Andy. Oh no, there's two pieces. I'll quickly rattle through them. New Year gyms. Now, I'm a man who is averse to a gym membership. Well, I have had gym memberships in the past, but I've been once bitten, twice shy, I think is the case, that you end up paying forever and never cancel them. And then when you do, they seem inexplicably complicated to be able to get out of, and you end up paying for them. So I was asked anyway, how can you reduce your gym membership fee?
Do you know how much it costs? Incidentally, do you know how much it cost me a couple of years ago per gym visit? Because I kept a spreadsheet on it.
Did you?
Yeah, because
you worked out, calculated how much you spent by how much you actually went.
Yes.
Right.
£238 per visit. Yeah, I think it was. I went 3 or 4 times over 14 months, and it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
That's incredible. You'd expect to be given a Rolex watch every time you rocked up or something if you were paying that much for gym membership. Wow, Andy. All I can say is wow.
Yeah, and all I can say is London prices.
Right, gym memberships. If you want to get cheaper gym memberships, long-term contracts are the thing to avoid. And payasyougym.com is a website that gives you pay-as-you-go one-off passes to hundreds of gyms all over the country. You put your postcode into the website and you can, it searches a database of gyms. You can find ones to go to. Now, they claim to be able to reduce the cost of going to the gym by 20%. And they've been around for a number of years, so go and have a look at that if you do want to get discounted gym membership. Other ways include checking if your employer has any corporate memberships, or if you are going to take out health or life insurance. There are a number of companies out there, life insurance. If you Google it, I'm not going to give them a free advert, but there are a number of private medical insurance companies who give you 50% off gym memberships as part of it, because obviously they want you to be healthier and not make a claim, so it'd be cheaper for them to subsidise Andy even if he doesn't go to the gym. And obviously there's an encouragement to go which they build into it, so that's one other way. Other quick points: if you do go to a gym, you can negotiate. Gym membership, there are sales teams who have targets to hit, and so you can negotiate. So the signing on fee is one of those things that can be waived. I don't think, the few times I've had gym memberships, I don't think I've ever paid one because I end up holding out. Now, I have to massively caveat that with the idea that this is a game of supply and demand. So if they are in lean months, which will probably be in the autumn, because people go to the gym in the new year. If you go in the new year, you'll realise you have to queue for everything, and because everyone has their New Year's resolutions and there's queues out the door. Just ahead of the summer, everyone wants their beach bodies, but in the autumn and into the winter, no one goes. So they're the best times to actually join a gym, because you've got the ability to negotiate, because they're still trying to hit their targets. And also, go at the end of the month, because if you go in those periods at the end of the month, they're more likely to give you some form of discount. But the worst time to probably join a gym is the beginning of January. So that's not going to help anybody, but that's just a fact because everybody's going there. Of course, the other thing, all gyms do 1 day free passes. If you want them, go and ask them to try it out. And if you've got a mate who's a member, they always get free passes to try and convince friends. You can have a few of those. That's not sustainable. You can't live off of free passes to go to a gym membership. But I was asked if there's any way of getting a free gym membership. The only thing is, do you know in a lot of parks now, the council are installing outdoor gym equipment. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah.
And I've had a go on them with my daughter because she loves them. She thinks they're brilliant, even though she's only 7 and can't reach them properly, and ends up almost doing herself a mischief every time she goes on there.
Yeah, because they're normally really sort of heavy cast iron.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on a cold day. You get one of those in your shins.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. Well, what happens is, Daddy, can you have a go? And then you go on there and then you end up almost tearing your hamstring, which I'm prone to do. And you sort of try and styling out. So, yeah, so they're the tips of how you can go about it. The other alternative is get a twin brother who you look like and share a gym membership. I'm not saying I know anybody who has actually done that. I just tell
and that
you,
goes for train passes. That goes cinema membership, prison sentences, or anything. I'm not condoning people use the idea of being a twin to money save. It's a very unique bunch of people who can do that. Anyway, I'll move on before I cause trouble. I saw a quick one on gym memberships. I saw something. It was probably on social media, maybe Instagram or Facebook, but someone had posted and said, "I don't know why all these gym bunnies keep moaning about all the newbies arriving in January. I didn't moan when they came in my pubs during Christmas time." So yeah, I thought that was quite a clever little twist on that. I thought it was quite funny.
Yeah, I like that. Right, I'm conscious of the time. What is the time? We've been going for a while now, Andy. I've got a quick thing to finish on. The last thing I wanted to do was just to update people on 80/20 Investor. Now, I've done an update for members, and I just wanted to chuck a few figures out there. If you're interested in investing, if you don't want to do something passive like we talk about by our sponsors at the beginning of the podcast, and you want to do it yourself to try and beat the market and run it yourself and manage it, then obviously 80/20 Investor is my DIY investment service where I teach people how to do it and screen investments and funds for them. And since I've been doing it, I started in March 2015, so that's nearly just shy of 2 years. But I'm up about almost 14.4% versus the average for professionally run multi-asset fund of 8.5%, and my benchmark, and the FTSE is even lower than that. So you can see the gap. I just wanted to say I don't push it enough. People have told me that I don't talk about it enough to try and encourage people to go and have a look. You can get a free 30-day trial, no obligation, if you want to have a go. So go and have a look, and you're going to learn stuff anyway. It's not just about funds. I teach people about investing and all that macro stuff. So there you go. And a quick point on a bit of research I did about 2 years ago. As part of that, I worked out when the best and most profitable day to invest is in the year, and we just passed it. It was on the 3rd of January, so there's a little snippet. But the point is, this time of year is good historically, and if you wonder how I worked that out, or how that can even be possible, then you're going to have to take a free trial to read the full article. So there we go, Andy, I am done.
Great stuff, Damien. Really, really enjoyed that. And of course, you mentioned it earlier on in the show anyway, but if you do want to get hold of Damien's book for free, if you've made that New Year's resolution to save money, download the 30-day money plan. Buy it if you like, it's $4.99. But if you want it for free, then you can review the podcast, and there's details at the end of this podcast that will explain how to do it. Do make sure you do it. Damien, 2017, new year, new us.
Yeah, new us, just as exciting. We've got a lot of stuff planned. I'm not going to cover it today, but we've got some exciting things. So yeah, send in any of your requests of what you want to be on the podcast, on Ask Damien, as me answering questions via video on the likes of YouTube and Facebook. Money to the Masses with the number 2 at Twitter. And you can obviously email me at damien@moneytothemasses, or podcast at moneytothemasses.
Good stuff. Until next week.
Until next week.
Don't forget to claim your free copy of Damien's best-selling book, The 30-Day Money Plan. Sort your finances in just 5 minutes a day, worth $4.99. Just go to moneytothemasses.com/podcast to find out how.